But this morning, we have a special treat. Alvin's laughing at me. But we are going to continue our conversation that Austin helped start last week on reconciliation and incarceration. Ways in which we can continue to be mindful of the systems that we are participating in, whether we know it or not. And a huge part of that, in my mind, is bringing in folks who are doing the work around reconciliation and incarceration. And so without further ado, I would love to introduce my friend Alvin Shim from Underground Ministries. They do some really powerful work at the men's state prison up in Mount Vernon, and I'm sure other places that
most prisons. We have a jail in Mount Vernon, but prisons across the state. Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah.
And we're excited to learn from him this morning and to be able to have conversation. He'll be here as well for doing a moment for mission during service, and even hang out for coffee hour. All of your good questions.
Well, this is church. We don't sit in front.
I know. It's always the same thing.
Absolutely. So Alvin, I'll toss it over to you.
Thank you so much. That's very kind. And I always push back because I'm an unhealthy person. So when people say, oh, you're doing the work, I'm like, no, you're doing the work. For One Parish One Prisoner specifically, we invite churches to care about, learn about, embrace and welcome one person home from prison who's coming home anyway to this area after they've served their time. And then there's a billion questions after that of, is that a good idea? Is that safe? And then underneath that, like, well, how would we do that? What would that look like? And those questions, I don't know, because it's your relationship, hypothetically, for this one person who's very a unique person, just like everyone here. So I fall into the trap, and our community often falls into a trap of like, there's us who have never been incarcerated, and I'm not going to ask if you have been, versus people who have been and are, and usually the people that we work with from prison have been multiple times, and they tried getting out and getting their life together on their own. But the stories we hear on their own means same ex-girlfriend, same social structures, same access to meth, heroin, drinking, all those things. So I'm really encouraged. I'm mostly buoyed by our incarcerated applicants reaching out to us and saying, I have trust issues. I'm scared about church. I'm scared about being with new people. I have been burned by Christians before specifically. And I know that I can't do this by myself. So I want to be the weirdo in the orange jumpsuit with a bunch of sinless white Christians. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And
makes sense.
I don't say like right away, like, no, these are terrible people right away. I don't say that, but I say something like, I think they will surprise you on this gradual journey of how much they're struggling with. And I think you will both surprise each other. Because it's One Parish, One Prisoner is we match a team at a church a year before the person's released. More if we can, but minimum a year. And you take the same training and you write letters and you build a relationship, and then your team meets every month to pray and share from letters and talk. And then Minute for Missions is a built-in thing that the church can say, oh, that thing that we're doing, we want to hear about that along the way. And then that builds up and builds up. And then, for example, the person in prison that you're matched with will say her name is Carol. It's freaked out. And says, oh, you're going to share my name and pray about me at church. Like, I want to hear what that's about. I want to hear what the reception is. And you're all saying like, no, it's good. Like, my friend prayed this as a response to your prayer. And we read your letter in tandem with this letter from the Bible from prison, and this bigger conceptualization. And there's ground rules along the way. We're not trying to fix or save or convert this person. And that's not a bonus at the end once they get out. And if they get baptized and start attending here, and it gets front page of the newsletter, that's fine. But then I'm going to be calling Kelly being like, how much pressure was there to get Carol baptized and become a Presbyterian? Because it happens sometimes. And that's okay, because Carol might be like, there are 7 people here that are my best friends now. And they're my new community. So like, I'm going to go where my community gathers. And then we hope the community makes room for and adjusts to welcome Carol. So that's, I wanted to get what OPOP is out of the way. And let's, if I'm gonna invite you to, let's close our eyes and imagine the day-to-day lived reality of being incarcerated. So we're in a room not as warm and soft and pleasing like this. And if you're drinking coffee, it costs $7 and it sucks. And the coffee sucks. And I think you make about 40 cents an hour. So really savor that coffee. Maybe you've been in prison for 3 years, maybe 12 years, maybe 30 something years. And the people that you need to see in your life every day, stop visiting every day. And it's not soft carpet and soft walls. There's noises banging around concrete and steel. And the noises are cries of despair and violence. You're always cold. You're always hungry. And you share an open toilet with maybe 3 other people. And maybe 2 of those people hate you. The clothing you're given to wear is scratchy. It's giving you a rash. You can't pop into the chiropractor because your back's doing that weird thing again. They canceled church this Sunday. They canceled church today last minute. They said we don't have the staffing. They said that last week too. The tablets that you have are still offline. So you can't email your friends and your family that aren't coming to visit you as often as you'd like. Your kids are growing older without you. And if you're getting out soon, you don't know what you're going to do. If you are among the people that reach out to us, you've never had a driver's license. You've never had your own checking account. We're going to look backward now a little bit. You grew up with one parent and a long string of terrible partners with that one parent. You were given your first beer at age 5. The people that your single parent has been bringing into your life has told you every day that they've known you that you're a burden and you're getting in the way. You're not going to amount to anything. So because of that lifestyle, you seek comfort and welcoming in the streets. Now you have this rap sheet against you. And you can imagine coming into a building like this and everyone noticing a lot of face tattoos. Basically, you're imagining they can see the 4, 5, 6, 15 felonies on your rap sheet. We've been told by our incarcerated friends that the week leading up to release is the most stressful part of their lives, which is really saying something if you can Imagine how much stress they've lived through in their life. So when your brain is flooded with that much activity, you're going to jump back to your well-trodden coping mechanisms in your brain. Unfortunately, those are meth, heroin, drinking, binge drinking, unhealthy relationships, which is really effective at you not addressing your day-to-day life. Then you do that. You call in a favor basically as soon as you're out with your friends to get some, and then now you owe them. And now you're sick because you're withdrawing from it again. So not only are you out of prison, you've gone on your first bender, you're withdrawing, you have limited to no resources. What's your plan then? More meth. That's too much stress. More meth. Now, I've never tried meth. Oh, you can open your eyes if you want to. I've never tried meth, but I hear a lot about it professionally. And I've been a Christian my whole life. And I'm just starting to be honest with like, this thing must be really good. That must be really, really good if you're throwing away your relationship with your kids and your spouse and your family and stability and warmth and food and water for meth on the streets again. And I saw people on the streets on the way in. I'm sure you have too. The decision, I mean, because it's not fair to be like, you're making a logical decision to do this because it takes over your brain. But choosing that again and again, once you're clean, once you've been sober for X amount of time, is really boggling. And that is the kind of journey we are inviting churches just like this into. We have 53 teams, 53 OPOP teams across the state, which is awesome, which is yesterday at the conference, we listed off all 53 of them. And even I wanted to be like, we can't list off all 53, that's too many. And then right away, me and the team were like, we have to at least take 2 seconds to list the name and the church because they're doing this incredible thing 53 times. But because I'm unhealthy and cynical, I'm thinking of the 80, 90 people in prison waiting. And before November's over, probably 4 of them, I'll have to say, we couldn't find you a church in time. We couldn't do it. It's not your fault. It's not because of you or your conviction history. Many, many churches again said, you know what? Can't do it right now. It's a good idea. It's the holidays. We're focused on the holidays right now. Come back to us in like February, and like March, and like April, in like August. Let's say August.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Do we have any comments or thoughts from that? Imagining this now. Yeah.
What are the support systems other than churches?
That exist?
Yeah.
DOC has a reentry division that's like 2 years new. It doesn't do anything, but they keep hiring more people. But the 90 people that I'm talking to in prison have never been contacted by them. And then the people that are getting released without an OPOP team have never heard from their DOC assigned rep. So what exists outside of that? There are more small, undermarketed, underfunded, incredible resources that are available. But for the most part, it's like, because of those facts about them, for the most part, it's like, once you're out of prison, walk through our door, and then we'll get you on a waiting list, and then we'll try to get you some help. Which is great.
Except for they need help right away.
Which is great, yeah, except for that. Except for that. And it varies place to place, and it varies depending on conviction history. It doesn't work as for the user experience of the person leaving prison, not much. No. And we're a better state than most with legislation according to incarceration. Yeah.
Let's say we have a relationship with somebody coming in for this church. We're kind of a commuter church, and our experience says that sometimes people on the margins will get help, but they're pretty mobile. And we've worked with people before, homeless families before, And you can kind of develop a relationship, but they're pretty mobile and pretty soon they disappear. And so this is a pretty rich neighborhood. We've lived in the same house for 30 years and we have a car, everything commuted and all that. So now what would be the situation in the long term? If you develop a relationship with one or more prisoners. How could they operate with, let's say, our Presbyterian in terms of, would they be housed locally? Would they be able to commute? Could we develop a long-term relationship? That's what happens.
That's the ultimate and really the only goal is relationship. We're jumping ahead to the OPOP logistics, but it depends on the person and whether they have family that they can be housed with after incarceration. That might be the plan, hypothetically, if there was a team here and that would match with someone. Hypothetically, Carol might say, it's okay, I got my boyfriend and my kids there. And then a month or two into the relationship, Katie says, tell me about your spouse, tell me about your girlfriend, tell me about your kids. And you tease out that information. And Katie has trust in the relationship enough to say, like, is it a good idea for the 8th time leaving prison to live with this person for your own goodness, for everyone's health? And maybe it's yes. And maybe you think no, but maybe Carol says, no, this has to be it. And you say, okay, cool. And then you go home and tell Kelly, I'm not happy with this, but this is the relationship. Like I gotta, like, she's heard my take on it. And that's the embrace and intimacy that we're hoping for. Even if it turns out you were right all along, that's the messiness of relationship that we want. So I can't tell you what's going to happen in this hypothetical scenario, but the idea is that your team will figure it out together, Carol included. Yeah.
So I have just a question. I can't pronounce that word.
Recidivism.
Thank you.
If you say it really fast, people think you know what you're talking about.
It's about 33% in Washington State. Is that correct?
Probably more, but I know it took a dip when we stopped incarcerating people for being addicted to things. But yeah.
And then how long does your program run, and what is the return rate to prison for people?
Our curriculum runs for 2 years, so 2 years of monthly training. But it's not, you start here, you finish here. Because life is messy, you might want to jump back to the addiction module, or you might have to read the when they disappear and relapse module a few times. The only measure of our success is, do these 7, 8, 9 people still care about each other? Not recidivism, not are they housed, not whatever. When disaster strikes, when they relapse for the 1st, 4th, 5th time, how many of these people are saying, my heart is broken and I can't do this anymore, and I'm just going to show up on Sunday and sing and then go home? Or how many of them are saying, my heart is broken, can we light some more candles, can we do a drive, can we go do a search in the city, can we do something, and call in our other friends and be led by our broken hearts? And then the fun part is, because this is a real experience. I just got a text from our team in the San Juans that their friend on their 4th relapse, who had most recently been inpatient for 2.5 months, and he got up 3 days and was using meth again. And the team is like, how could he do this? Which means, how could he do this to us? And in their processing, they land on the same spot of like, yeah, this happens to us. How many times can we do this? How many times has Jesus done this for us? Over and over and over again. Because that's the unfortunate thing is, we believe it, that we are saved by Jesus over and over and over again. So we have to try to live into that. Our recidivism rate is pretty low, all told. If they get picked up again, they'll do like maybe 2 weeks in jail. But there are, of the 53, I think there's maybe 6 that have gone back to prison after, which is pretty good. But we're not a nonprofit that's a reentry organization. We're a ministry trying to break the hearts of people in church. So we're doing our job then. Yeah.
A question from the flat screen, Alvin. Just wondering, typically, how soon does the relationship begin with the men or women still inside?
How soon does it begin?
Yes, does it start while the candidates are still inside?
Correct. As much time as we can before release, but at minimum a year.
Okay.
Yeah. I do want to bring it back though to that short imagining of maybe 8-12 years of incarcerated. What happened? What did you experience? What did you feel?
Well, they started off with a very tough life.
They did.
Beginning.
Usually, yeah.
Sometimes it's like you feel like, which isn't always possible. You could start with the kids first before they get incarcerated, but that doesn't happen obviously all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's programs out there trying to help kids in school, but it's just like the pipe. It's just like when you talk about the racist problems that we have that Black men. It's like the pipeline to prison.
School to prison, right?
Yeah. You know, of course, we have had a lot of classes on that, but I feel like the prisons aren't doing anything in the first place to rehab.
You're not correcting these people?
No, they're not helping them become where they could get love and things like that. They're not helping them with that kind of thing.
I wonder, I wonder if is this a group that wants to, and you wouldn't be the first, is this a group that has hesitation entering into, like, it could be me, the intimate personal part? You're right, and you're right, and you're right. But that's kind of theoretical, programmatic. Like, what did you feel when you were in that prison cell?
Well, I think it'd be very frightening and terrible if
Okay.
I was in prison. I mean, that's the scariest thing I could think of.
Hopeless.
Hopeless.
Yeah.
When my brother had to visit his son in prison, my brother had been in prison previously. And he said it was the hardest thing he ever did was going back and having the door shut behind him. And that was 30 years after he'd been in prison.
The PTSD.
Yeah. That sticks with you forever.
What a messy scenario. He had to visit his son in prison after he himself was in prison. Yeah, not uncommon though.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about even being cold. I'm a person who can be cold.
Oh,
And
nice.
when I get cold, like I have a hard time functioning. I lose feeling in my hands and then I just get really cranky. Katie shaking her head because you know it's true. So like even just that very small piece of it with like the rash underneath the clothing, like, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Well,
It's not like you can
I was
turn up the thermostat.
I know. I was thinking claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's just like no freedom. I don't know. It sounds all scary to me.
There's layers to how terrible it is. Like the rash doesn't go away. If a rash doesn't go away, it just gets worse.
Right? And I'm just from what you're saying, they're not going to take care of the rash. I take it in the prison.
No, and like if you say, "Excuse me, I have a rash. I need some help."
Right.
More in the men's prisons than the women's, but still in the women's too. That makes you a target. Yeah, it's bonkers ridiculous how silly that is, how inhumane that is.
Well, it all sounds unhumane.
Yeah.
I mean, that the prisons aren't really made to be humanity, which I wish sometimes you could change that too, change the prisons, start.
Yeah.
I wasn't at the class, we were gone, but I wish I would have saw the first class. So. Just none of it feels like they're helping humanity. The whole thing, I mean, you expect these people to go into jail and you're not You're not really focusing on their needs, or you're just saying you're bad.
Yeah.
They're not saying, well, you're a human being, let's help you.
Mhm.
Yeah, or even that your actions were bad, you personally
Are
are bad,
bad.
Right.
That's right, you know.
and then you're marked that way for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's the problem. You come back out and nobody wants to rent to
Mhm.
somebody who's incarcerated, or I don't know. The half of it, I mean, do they have to pay money to the state back for being in prison, or?
Yeah.
It's like, how's that work? You know, you don't have a job, you know, so why
Yeah.
wouldn't you go back to whatever that made you, I mean, I know addiction's hard because my dad was a recovering alcoholic, so.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just alcohol you're talking about. But also, a lot of those drugs change the brain chemistry, and
Yeah.
that's hard to get away from, so it's it just feels impossible sometimes.
Yeah.
So, but that's what you're dealing with, and I know addiction, no matter what, they want to go back to the addiction.
Mhm.
You know, because it took their soul away
Mhm.
from them, so.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're bad, just means they need a lot of help.
It means they're sick.
That's right.
Mhm.
They're addicted, they're sick. It's a
Yeah.
disease.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Go ahead, Rob.
I have a comment. I just by odd chance, this past week, I met with a fellow who just got out of 3 years in Walla Walla. And I asked him about this program, and he was not aware of it. He's a Black Muslim, so he said he wouldn't be aware of Christian related things. He said the one program that he's more familiar with that helps people is the Union Gospel Mission. And I don't know much about that, but he said their presence was around a lot. This particular fellow, he said he wouldn't have been looking for that because he has a strong family here in the Seattle area that is supporting him now. And so he's working his way back into the community.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad for this fellow that he has a strong community, and we never want to say like, no, you need this, especially when we have more incarcerated applicants than we have churches ready. But to your friend, if that was all different, like like I said, there's no secret goal to make these people Christian. And at the conference yesterday, when we had 53 OPOP teams gathered, one of the questions for our post-incarceration panel was, this is what some random person said, the most important thing is accepting Jesus in your life. You 8 men who have bared your souls for 20 minutes, have you accepted Jesus in your life? And Chris, my colleague, and I in the back, like, okay.
No,
Okay.
that's not.
So she hasn't paid attention for 2 years, and for the hour and a half that we were talking. And like, that's on you. You live out the love of Christ. You show that. You don't make people,
No, that's
don't put them on the spot in front of a crowd. Right. And some of them had been, and some of them, were, and then found Jesus, and which is great. And like a few gentlemen were like, no, I'm not gonna raise my hand. Like, I know who I am through my community with my OPOP church. This isn't part of that conviction.
Right.
I loved it. But that's part, like, we have all sorts of folks applying for our journey and trusting us when we say, you don't have to worship with us on Sunday.
No.
It's fine. You'll still be kind to you.
Yeah.
I swear.
It's true.
Yeah. So the second part. I'll pass this out. We'll read this out loud together so the folks at home can get it. But we all know the story of Lazarus. Jesus was on his tour.
Thank you.
Jesus is on this ministry tour, basically, and he hears that his friend Lazarus is sick, so they change direction. And they go back, but they don't make it back in time, because Lazarus is already dead. And his sisters and family receive Jesus and say, like, oh, if only you had been here. Oh no, you're a little too late. And Jesus weeps and says, let me see where you laid him. So they bring him to the tomb. And Jesus is looking at this big rock in a cave where his friend is buried, which is unspeakably horrible. And Jesus says, roll away the tomb. roll away the stones. And Lazarus' sister says, Jesus, it's going to smell really bad. We're not going to do that because it's going to be stinky. He's been dead for 4 days. And Jesus says, I told you, the glory of God will be shown. Like I can show you what's going to happen here through the power of my Father. So I repeat, roll away the tombs. And they do. And Lazarus comes out, and he's bound with linen strips, and his face is covered, and he can't move. And Jesus says, unwrap those layers. So this is the story for our incarcerated applicants for the stones and layers list. The stones that the community is commanded to unroll, to remove away from Lazarus are on that first list: employment, housing, driver's license, debts, fees. What else do you see on there?
Transportation, education, child support.
These real life logistical things that you have to unpause once you step out of prison. Now we can see this list, and I bet for most of us, we wouldn't check one of these boxes that we need help in our lives. But imagine you don't know how to do any of them and you have none of them. Those are the stones that Jesus said, roll them away. Jesus didn't say, yell at Lazarus until he figures it out on his own. Jesus didn't say, like, give him some encouragement so he can be self-sufficient. Jesus repeated twice. Jesus didn't say, no, it's not going to smell. Jesus said, it will smell. Roll them away anyway. They did.
Yeah.
They did. And then he could come out. And on the backside of the other layers. And those are worse. The layers that are covering Lazarus's face and his arms, they're covering who he truly is, who God created him to be. What are some of the things on that list? Trust issues. Everybody checks that box.
Gang identity, domestic violence, old tattoos.
Which,
Toxic relationship.
yeah, toxic.
Yeah. They said toxic relationships.
Anger, which mask do you wear?
Where do you run to when you have a problem? Some people call these idolatries or false allegiances. These are, I'm going to make you all raise your hand and admit. How many of these affect your life and your relationship with God and your family and yourself? Up until like 5 years ago, I would say most of these I've had a problem with and I've been avoiding it. My kid is about 4 now, so yeah, that's how it works.
Well, we have grandchildren.
So it gets worse.
Actually, it's,
Mental health struggles.
yeah.
Mental
Well,
health
mental
struggles.
health,
Yeah.
I go through mental health.
Yeah.
struggles.
If we're honest, I think we check a few of these. But imagine you're in prison and you get this list that your friend Alvin sent you with some padding and prep, like, this is like, I know this will be difficult. This might be difficult for you to fill out and look at. But I'm promising you, we're going to try to put a team together to help walk you down this road. And they're going to give of themselves too. Our friends are not signing up for re-entry resources. So usually what happens, Carol gets matched with a team at Newport and we do the kickoff and everyone writes their first letter to Carol. And then I hear from Carol later that week. I heard from Kelly, I heard from Mike. Mike's cool. And I'm like, yeah, Mike's cool. Yeah, there's 7 more people writing to you. And then the next week, Kelly says, I was talking to my cellie. My cellie was really confused that I got all these letters all of a sudden because people like us don't get letters. My cellie's been like grumbling about it for a week. Like, why is Carol getting letters? It's not special. What about me? So eventually Carol asks her, and then Carol says, oh my gosh, it's this crazy thing. It's called OPOP. Don't worry, they're not going to try to make you Christian. Here's part of it, blah, blah, blah. And then Carol will say, here's my friend, and here's my other friend, here's my other friend. And that's how this works in prison. That's how we gain recruitment in prison.
Gives them a little hope.
It gives them, well, like they're getting human contact.
Yeah.
from enthusiastic, kind, weird white Christians. Cool.
That's right.
So it's 7 people volunteer in the church to be involved. in this?
7 to 10 people become the team.
In the
Okay.
church.
Yeah. And then the church is also part of this along the way and brought in gradually more and more, especially as reentry planning happens. Yeah. But that's like details, that's logistics. We can do that, but
Making that relationship is what you're talking about first.
it's the way that, because our friends in prison before, during, and after the OPOP journey of the training is like, they're always saying like, I wish I had been more open at day one to building relationship with my whole team. But they have all these reasons about like, well-earned reasons about their life experience, about why they couldn't. And the team hopefully along the way says like, look, you shared the trauma in your life. I'm just so proud of you that you're alive and that you can enter into some relationship gradually. So they're yelling at themselves for that, for not being more healed and open to do this. And then on the other side, usually the church team says like, I should have done this more. We should have gotten this ready. Why didn't we get an apartment for this person? Trying to fix these problems, which is good. But that's not the biggest thing you can give these people is kinship, it's relationship. Once they're out and settled and they have the bank account and the job, instead of saying, okay, cool, I'll see you on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's saying like, let's go do that pumpkin patch thing because you've never been to a pumpkin patch. That's outrageous. Let's go to that pumpkin patch. I'll bring my grandkids. It'll be fun. Doing the built-in actual life together instead of popping in for however long services. That's what we're after. Because if that's the rhythm we have found from 53 teams experience, the person released from prison is still kind of floating around like, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? I'm inviting them over to eat the food that I grew up eating. And there's some polite no thank you. I don't want that.
Yeah, well, and if you don't have self-love, then you don't look for the good things. You have to look for the things because you don't deserve it. You go down to the lowest level.
Yeah, and that's
Because then
also hinged on this idea of the church team believing that they are the standard group of people that hopefully Carol will be strong enough to enter into and get into this team. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a new community that breaks open and forms a new place where Carol has a voice, where Carol is seen as a whole member and not a pet project.
Well, yeah, we have things to learn from them as well, right? So
I'm just gonna interject that the thriving congregations. That's one of the focuses of thriving congregations is we're not going out and helping people, we're helping ourselves by forming community. And so this falls right in line with that.
Right. And the number one thing that Tally says every meeting we have is get proximate. Right? We can't solve this
That's just a big
issue
word.
from way over here saying, oh, they are unfortunate.
Yeah.
right,
We have to build relationship.
right.
Because that also helps us thrive.
Yeah.
It's like our safe partners. We have people who come every single day to come check in, help sort the trash and recycling, right? Many of you are involved with that team. We can't provide a safe place for them to park their car and get some sleep if we don't know who they are or what they need.
Yeah. The system that we built, that like we're all American citizens, we pay taxes and we kind of vote. I don't think that could have helped it though. The system that we built falls onto this, like there's bad people over here and they're in these warehouses and we don't have to worry about them. And we designed it so we don't have to worry about them. But Jesus came to break open those warehouses. Jesus came to break down those walls and pull us up and back together. So we could demolish a prison building. We can't do that today, but we can go through the labyrinth and find contact with the people that are away from community and thriving and sunshine and warmth. And we can do our little part along with Jesus to do that. Yes,
So what are some of the best practices programs that you partner with that help with a lot of these issues that are the first set of issues?
it varies depending on where you are and what your person is looking at, but we're building like a playbook county by county about recovery homes, treatment centers and housing vouchers and et cetera. Yeah. It is a really impactful journey. Like the first 4 teams had a really impactful journey because they didn't have a playbook or learning modules, but they had the spirit to say, figure this out together. And one of the sub questions is, for our beloved Bellevue, how difficult is it for a person who needs help to get help? Can we save? Can we save one person and pull them out from this cycle? And those first 4 churches, they said, no, there's no resources here. And there's not enough time in our collective congregation, which leads to more questions like, why are we so busy? And we are. Why are we so busy? What are we busy with? These are uncomfortable questions. If we get to a point where we invite individuals in this congregation to register as team members, a lot of people will say, great idea. I love it. I'll support it. I don't have time for this. I don't have 4 to 5 hours a month. And they don't.
It's true.
And they shouldn't sign up then. But I've been to a few churches where it gets to this point and 3 people register out of 200 people.
Yeah, that's,
It's not enough. And
yeah,
I hope they take on the burden of like, what are we doing here? Not because this failed, but like, are we all so strapped? And how can we readjust in order to serve how strapped and time lacking we are? Because the other part of that is a team of 8, 7, 9, 10 people sign up and we do the registration and they write their first letter. And a month and a half later, they'll say to the team, they'll say to the pastor, I just don't have time for this. I can't do it.
yeah.
I can't do it. I think it's great. You guys keep going. I'll pray for you guys, but I can't do it. And then the pastoral care person's job is to seek them out and say, there's something going on here. I'm not going to try to keep you on the team, but you signed up, you registered, you went through the training, you made contact, and now you're going to jump out for no reason except for time. I don't think it's time. What's going on? And then there's something there that's really beautiful and holy and tragic that has to come out sooner rather than later because it hasn't come out in their whole life. I've never told anybody this, but my brother was in prison. My nephew's in prison. My son is in prison. I've been going here for 30 years. I've never told anybody about that. Use the stories that come out. It's terrible.
Yeah, they start feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
When a person gets out of prison, is there any financial support at all from the state? Is there anything?
there might be a housing voucher that nobody will take. There might be a housing voucher that nobody will take. You don't want to take on a 3-month client from an ex-con when you can take it on from a tech
Because
remote worker
They get the
for,
voucher, but they won't take, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to take them.
Oh,
yeah, why would you take a 3-month voucher for a criminal?
Well, it doesn't work.
It can work, and that's part of the challenge is like, especially for housing, we have to have a plan A and a plan B, C, D, E, F, G. And we got to see what resources are there. And we got to make a bleeding heart campaign to the person that's managing this apartment complex and say, we're vouching for this person. We have the first 2 months set, like we'll pay for that up front to save their spot. We have a job set up for them, but it's going to be part-time because they want to do re-entry.
Yeah.
To explain all of that to a person who's trying to fill these apartments in this real estate market, that's an uphill battle. Like it's hard to find housing here without a criminal history.
Yeah.
Is the Plymouth housing program help with that?
What was that? The Plymouth housing? What is that?
That's the new one down in Eastgate.
Oh, I don't know.
Congregations for the homeless.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
because Bellevue has, they're almost got all the buildings done.
Cool. Maybe.
It's huge. It's down there by the animal shelter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Cause there's tons, I mean, they did, how many buildings do they have? Well,
They have 3 buildings.
3, and then they have one for couples too.
They have one for families, they have
Yeah.
one for just men and one with the families.
Question in the back.
Oh, so are you involved with any of the grant programs that Washington State started up in 2021 related to the reentry?
Yeah, we got, I think 3 from the Department of Commerce, and we got some from ACH. We're trying. Yeah, we're trying to keep this going, so we're gonna strive for the 3 grants.
Has that been helpful working with them?
Yes and no, the money has been nice. The reporting and the metrics. And the changing of so the Department of Commerce didn't ask for this allocation from the governor to do this, so they didn't ask for this, they've never done this before. And they acted like they've never done this before. So it's been an uphill.
Yeah.
It's been tough. We're here, we're grateful, but it's been, if we had known now what we knew back then, we wouldn't have gone.
How long has the program been around?
Underground Ministries was launched in 2017, but it's been happening since like 2013 or so.
I'd love to just make a brief note, and I'm gonna duck out to get myself ready for service, but one of the things that really struck me about Newport as I was applying and talking to the wonderful PNC and some of you were in the room, is this identity of welcome and inclusion, which means a lot to me as a queer person, and we continue to grow and expand and have all gender backgrounds. And somehow Alvin sent me an email about something totally unrelated to this. And I said, you know, we can talk about the OPOP program here. And I never want this to be like a Pastor Kelly wants it to happen, so we have to make it happen system. That's not it. That's not.
Would that work?
I don't think so.
I don't think
You know, we need to buy it. We need to buy it. That's why Alvin is here today.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
talking about these things.
Why am I talking about that?
But I think it's important for us to continue to ask that question, right? You can watch our timeline out there in the atrium of our inclusion of queer folks. And that is important, and we will continue to do work there. But I don't think that the question stops there. Who is excluded in spaces like this? Who will never walk through those doors because they just can't imagine that a church is as wonderful as we are? And so I just want to throw that out there as some of my encouragement as we continue to discern if this is the right program for us, if this is the right time for us. That I'm going to keep challenging us to ask that question of who is not here, who still needs to be welcomed and invited and included. So this is part of my little sprinklings that I have been putting in about this program, and bringing Alvin here session this last week. We did some of the I don't remember what you all call the program or the prayer that you send.
Welcoming prayer.
The welcoming prayer, you know, those kinds of things. We're talking about this because we know that this is an issue. Alvin, when we talked months ago, said we have a young Asian American woman who's going to be released to Bellevue. Bellevue, here. Like, that's just crazy. And they couldn't find a church to match her with. And so while we of course can't rush our process and our yes, and making sure that we have the appropriate support to say yes to this program, I think about that pretty often, of the folks that we're having to say no to, or the folks that don't even know that this kind of love and belonging is possible. Regardless of who they are or what they've done, right? We say that all the time in worship. Hopefully you've heard that from me. And so just an encouragement along the way, especially some of the theology behind welcome and inclusion that Austin talked about last week. If you weren't here, I really recommend watching the YouTube video of the ACE class. But this is not going to go away. I'm going to keep asking this question. And not to force us into programs, but to continue to expand our identity of who we are as Newport Presbyterian Church. And I could see based on the nods in this room that that's not a surprise that that's who we are. But hopefully you feel some of that excitement in your gut as well of continuing to figure out what that means for us.
Are you Kelly? Yes. Yeah. Question of Pastor Kelly.
Yeah.
What is our next step? Will there be an opportunity in worship this morning for people to express an interest? Is there a focused person? I'm just kind of thinking how we begin to assemble a potential critical mass to maybe pursue this program.
Absolutely. So Alvin's going to do a moment for mission during worship later today to clue in the folks who weren't able to be here or who haven't yet heard more about this program. And then we will figure out a way for folks to probably tell me if they're interested, and we'll see if we have enough, energy and dedication to actually say yes to the program from there.
Yeah, because you have to do 2 months training.
Yeah, there's some training involved. I know when we talked about it in session, Nancy said, how can we make sure that we aren't doing this just based on our own knowledge of things?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
and
training,
that's
it's
why
always
it's great to
important to
have.
have training.
Did you say 2 months training? 2 years training.
Oh, 2 years.
Yeah,
okay.
monthly training, 2 years.
Oh, okay.
1 year before release, 1 year after release.
Oh, okay, well, that's probably good. Gotta have education.
Yeah.
Right? 'Cause
What's your
it's
question?
like-
I was just wondering, where do you go for the training? Where does the church go?
After the training?
Where do they go?
Oh, it's online. It's
Oh,
video
online.
and reading,
Oh,
yeah.
oh,
Because your person's in prison.
Uh-huh.
So we'll send, like, the team will mail in the same training that you're reading. And it's about a different topic each month. Yeah.
Did we meet the prisoner online?
You start with writing letters, and that graduates to emails. You learn how to do JPEGs, prison emails. Graduates to voice calls, video chats, and then hopefully when in-person visits, you take the pilgrimage to Walla Walla or Monroe or somewhere. Gig Harbor for ladies.
Over a 2-year period.
Yeah.
oh. Okay, well, that's good to know.
Thank you. Thank you, Alvin. Appreciate it
Thanks,
very
friends.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
So this program is done for both the men and the women then,
Yes,
okay?
and all sorts of people, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We had a second.
Well,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had to actually like in a minute.
Okay,
yeah, I think we're probably.
okay, thanks, everybody. I'll see you in there.